Hello, everyone. Review session number 1 for your exam. I would suggest before I go on to answer your questions on the Google Doc or any question you might have follow up to it, I will open the floor just to answer. This might be something you're quite anxious to know. Is there any administrative related question you want to ask about the exam? I can start with that, maybe for about 5 to 10 minutes, just to clarify any confusion you might have. Okay, just either speak up or you can type on the chat. I'll answer this first in the first 10 minutes. Okay,
Professor?
so, sorry, let me just answer before you speak up, sorry. I can see something on the chat from Pavel, actually. Will the exam format similar to the quizzes? Okay, so basically, guys, feel free to ask me anything that you want to know. I may not be able to answer every question, but anything I answer, that'll be the truth, all right? Okay, so one thing about the formats, I can tell you exactly what the format will be. There will be, for the exam, first of all, it will be 2 hours. So this, it will be this Sunday, 9 a.m., okay? And then just make sure you have to start the exam at 9 a.m. If you start late, that means you got less time, less than 2 hours to complete it, okay? And then about the formats. About the format for exam, you got multiple choice. Okay, I'll be more elaborate on this. So this will be no surprise. It will be very similar to your quiz. So it may be like a single choice. For example, it might be only one answer for the question. You will see radio button, just choose one of them, right? Or it could be single. Or it could be like a multiple choices. So the correct answer might be more than one. In which case, you will see some rectangle boxes over here, right? So it might be that the correct answer will be maybe both this and this, okay? And also, you will also get a so-called matching type of questions. Meaning that if you may have some description over here, some description over here, and there is some drop-down menu box over here, then you have to choose, right? If you click on that, you're going to choose something from here, so you'll appear as the answer, right? You have seen that already in your quizzes. Okay, so what's new for the formats? Let me tell you. The second type will be more like a, how should I phrase that? Let me say short answer questions. Okay, I'll give you one example over here. So for this type of question, the answer will be only a few words or maybe some fragment of code that you have to write. Okay, let me warn you about this. For this type of question, it will be graded automatically. So not graded manually. So when you, I will also warn you that in the question itself, just to tell you this question will not be graded manually. Meaning that, for example, if the answer should be about, let's say, single choice principle, for example, right? So your answer really should be single choice principle. Normally, the cases shouldn't matter. You can be maybe uppercase over here, maybe uppercase over here. That's okay. If you put some extra spaces in between, that's also fine. But I would say just to be not to be so risky, just one space. And then you don't want to spell anything wrong, so that's why there are not that many questions like this. Only 1 or 2, or maybe about less than 5. Let me say it that way. And then for this, you have to be very careful about typing the terms. Okay, you shouldn't really make any spelling mistake. If you make any spelling mistake, too bad. You're gonna lose the mark for that. So that's why I want you to get prepared. Okay, number 3. This is why you don't really just want to. I hope not many of you have done that. Maybe in the quizzes, maybe sometimes you simply just go over the choices in the menu box and then to see which one makes more sense or which one doesn't make sense, and then you can eliminate the possible answer. For type number 3, that's not something you want to do, right? I call that the essay questions. The essay question is a little bit similar to how you would do when you were to write an in-person exam, right? Like a proper invigilated exam. But now since it's online, so I just tried my best I could to really test your knowledge. So you will be given, for example, this part will be the question itself, right? You will see some description over here, and then you will be given some answer box over here. And over here, you can type as many lines as you like. But typically, it shouldn't be too many lines. So I would say, when I say essay question, it's not really try to write an essay like a social science. I would say typically maybe no more than 5 sentences, no more than that. But you will see the individual questions to really judge. No more than 5 sentences. Okay, that's as far as I can remember. So you can see type number 1 is actually definitely familiar to you, so you know how to get prepared for that. However, for type number 2 and especially type number 3, you want to get ready for that, right? So especially for type number 3, it's really testing to see how well you can really communicate your ideas to the reader, either myself or most likely the TAs. So you want to be as precise and concise as possible. Writing much for your answer doesn't really mean you will get marks, right? You want to write precisely to the point, all right? Okay, so that's about the formats, but I remember somebody wanted to speak up. Could you please speak up, and then I'll answer you.
Professor?
Jimit, yes.
Yeah. For number 3, that will be graded manually, right? As far as
Correct.
I think of it. Because
correct. Number 3, it will be graded manually. That's correct.
It's like if it's a syntax error, it's a small syntax error, I think we deserve some mark for communicating to the
Yes, I think number 3 wouldn't be too much about writing code. It wouldn't be. It would be more about justification. For example, I might just give you some paragraph, maybe short paragraph describing some design scenario, and then this is the design attempt. And then you may just want to justify whether or not the design attempt is actually suitable or not, giving some reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, any more questions you want to speak up before I move on to the chat? I can see quite many things going on. That's why I want to clarify the doubts, first of all, before I go into the questions.
Hi, Professor. I had a question, if that's okay.
Yes, please, Dimitri, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. For the multiple choice questions, so for example, for quizzes, some of the questions we had is, as we were, in some lectures, there were multiple attempts to design the best solution.
Yes.
So let's say in the case of a multiple choice, and if we get a question to comment on, let's say, attempt, like a particular attempt of the solution, would the solution diagram be included in the question, or like I hope, or like it's not going to be like remember lecture 5 part B.
Okay, I see what you mean.
C
I definitely see your concern. So let me answer you very carefully. I don't want to say anything that's not accurate. Okay, so basically, yes, 2 things I want to say. Okay, 2 things. Several things, actually. It will be open book. Exam. And of course, no collaboration. Is a no-no, right? Okay, and then, so Dimitri, the question you just asked, is it possible that I might say, for example, to say recall, maybe slide X, maybe bullet points Y, in which case it's going to require you to spend some time going to the slides or maybe to look up something. I would say no, as far as I can remember. I can double check on my exam to make sure there's no such stuff. I think the principle will be every question will be self-contained. Meaning that, for example, if I say I want you to consider maybe the first attempt of our student management system when we talk about the inheritance, in that case, I'll definitely give you the precise detail over there. So you don't really have to look up what's really happening in the actual slides. You don't have to. Okay. So each question will be self-contained. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Also, since I say it's going to be open book, so I would suggest maybe you can yourself, it might be a good study process anyway, even though we wouldn't check, but you can definitely just prepare yourself maybe some data sheets, or with so-called crib sheets, in which case you can put all the necessary theorems or facts in the sheets. In that case, if you, anytime you might need it for your explanation or maybe for your recollection, just feel free. That's okay. That's not totally fine. Okay. All right. I also try to review all the questions myself before the actual exam, because we won't be able to answer you any questions during the exam. So I will try to make sure everything is as precise as possible. Okay. So Dimitri, is that okay for your question?
Yeah, that clarifies.
All right, very
perfectly.
good. Okay. Okay, guys, if nobody wanted to speak up, let me just go over the chat just to answer one by one, all right?
Sorry, can I speak up real quick?
Oh, yes, okay, go ahead, please.
Hello. So how many questions are going to be on the exam, if that's like a question you can answer?
You know what? Telling you how many questions there are may not help you too much. How about this? You know, as I said, you know, anything I tell you, I don't want to be inaccurate. Because the current draft I have is still subject to changes, but I can tell you it's somehow roughly between 15 and maybe, let me put a slightly wider range, 15 to 25. Of course, out of all the questions there, they are the mixed of all the three types, 1, 2, 3. And you got 2 hours to really solve the problems. There will be some questions. There's something I can tell you, okay? I can tell you what the total marks are. The total marks is 200. And of course, it's actually just for the easiness for us to grade. So for example, eventually, let's say for you, if you get maybe 190, let's say that means you actually got 85% for the exam, right? That's how we calculate. The reason that we put 200 rather than 100, just to give us a little bit more leniency or flexibility when you grade you manually. But I think, let me just tell you this number is the accurate number as of now. If I do change the total marks to be something different, I will make an announcement before the exam. So how can this be useful? For example, if the total mark is simply maybe 200, and then you're encountering, let's say you really got limited time, you just cannot finish the exam, you may want to strategize your exam. In that case, maybe you're facing either one question with 20 marks versus another question maybe with 50. It's quite obvious. You want to try this one, maybe, for example, right? So that's something you may want to take into consideration. All right. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, just so following up on this one, so would the exam be of similar time limits as the quiz? Like, would the time be exactly precise to, like, if you read the question, you have to answer it like within a few seconds, basically?
I would say for some questions, yes. I think especially for the multiple choice, there are some questions that are very similar to what you did in the quizzes, which I definitely expect you to maybe answer, maybe faster. But I can tell you that there are certain questions over there. You can also see from the weights. So there are maybe 1 or 2 questions that I don't really expect you to answer right away. You definitely need some time to read through the question to see what's being asked, and also you have to read through. So I would say there's actually quite a wide range of questions. So guys, if I were you, when I was a student, this is what I typically do. Although you don't really have a physical paper in front of you, but all of you took quizzes before on the eClass, you may just want to maybe flip, just go to every page for the question, just get an idea about what kind of question you have. Maybe, for example, sometimes maybe as soon as you see a diagram over there that looks like a visitor pattern, in that case, you know that you're going to be asked something about visitor. In that case, maybe you feel comfortable about answering visitor question first, you can definitely do it. Oh, another one I want to mention, right? Some of you also put on the forum, also which I answer. So let's say if you got, for example, this many questions on the eClass, let's say, can you jump to the question there? They say, I want to answer this and then come back here, and also maybe answer this, come back to here. Yes, you can do it, okay? I know that maybe some in other courses, maybe the professor, they might choose to maybe to say, once you go to one question, you cannot go back. It's not the case for your 3311 exam. Okay, it's just a choice. So you wouldn't have to worry about this, all right? All right, any more questions you want to speak up to ask me before I go over some chat? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question that you have access to the quizzes during the exam or no?
I believe you will have, I'm not going to lock the quizzes. Actually, you know what? I think currently you could just get access to the quizzes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to lock it. However, I don't think you really need it. But if you really feel the need to really look into it, that's okay. I'm not going to lock the access. If you
I just want to confirm in case, that's why I asked.
Yeah, you wouldn't be considered as breaching academic honesty if you look at that. That's okay. You can definitely look at your quizzes. Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let me now go over some chat question over here. Okay. Okay. So would the exam be multiple choice question? Yeah, I already explained. We got a mix of types. And then for doing the for doing the correctness of loop proofs, how are we going to do the formatting for the answer? Okay, good. This might be worth talking about. Okay, so let me just go to one of the lecture notes. This is, it's good that you remind me about this. So guys, I can tell you that you will be asked, positive, you will be asked to do some proofs, okay? Exactly what you will be asked, I may not tell you now, okay? So, but let me just give you some idea, okay, what the expectations are. Just give me one moment. Let me just go to your lecture notes. If you go to your lecture 12, okay, let me just give you one example over here. The simple one. Okay, for example, okay. So now basically, as we said, you know, in the lecture, if you want to prove the correctness of a program, you will have to, number one, you have to formulate the whole triple, like this, right? You got a precondition, you got a statement, you got a postcondition. And then when you calculate the WP, you must present in this particular way. That's also for the easiness for yourself to understand along the way, and also for the easiness for us to grade. Basically, you have some expression over here, start with this WP, and then you're going to turn this into another one, and turn this into another one. Eventually, you might get to some predicate, for example, true. And then the format would be, I would say, I wouldn't be so picky to say this must be curly brackets, but you can just follow that, right? You also got access to your slides. If you want to simply get reference to it, that's definitely fine, right? But for every step you try to derive from the original one, you must actually put some reason over here. So that's why I call it equational style of the proofs, all right? So that's about how you present a proof. And then if there's any, and then the next step would be whether this particular weakest precondition is actually weaker than the actual precondition. In that way, you will simply just need to write some lines to prove about whether the implication is a tautology. That one there, I have no constraint about how you present your proof. As long as your proof is readable by myself or the TA, that's okay. But for this part here, I'll be quite insistent. When you calculate the WP, you must follow the equational style. All right?
Sorry.
Okay. Yes,
yeah.
go ahead, please.
What I meant is, like, for example, if we need quantifiers, like the for all already exists in our proofs, how is that going to be?
You know, why don't we, for the sake, I'm pretty sure, you have thought about the issue, let's do it together for the sake of your fellow students. For example, universal quantifier, I wouldn't mind if you simply say for all. That's okay. For all x, maybe of type integer, such that maybe 1 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to. If you want to, I don't think you need to put square, but let's say 23. It is the case. Bullet point, you can just put dot over here, right? Sometimes people like to put at over here, like a bullet point, but doesn't matter, okay? And then you might say maybe x is larger than 0. What about exists? You can say exists over here. And then you also got other logical quantifier. So I would say for negation, you can either put exclamation mark like in Java, or you can put not. And conjunction, you can put this, I don't mind, or you can put this, looks like a mathematical expression, or you can put and, that's also fine. How about disjunction? This is okay, and then this is okay, and also or. What about implication? I don't think you got implication in Java, so you just say implies, or you can say this, or you can say this, either way. Ovek, any other operator you can think of you want to ask about how to write it?
No, I think that's all.
Okay, no problem. I think it's a good question. So guys, I think when you present a proof, I would say if you really, I think every symbol must have their corresponding symbol in the ASCII from the keyboard. So as long as you think about what symbol you might write, so that should be okay, right? So I think since it's going to be graded manually, as long as we know what you're doing, it should be okay, all right? Okay, and then of course, when you present an equational proof, for example, you might say two spaces WP of something over here followed by something, right? And then I would say equal sign here. Let me just give you some example. And then I will put some reasoning over here. I might say root of WP variable assignments, right? And then I'll put some indentation WP here and then here. And then every result, you must put some reasoning over here. And then maybe eventually you get to true, all right? So that would be maybe the part you want to be, just practice a little bit. It's not really counterintuitive. It's actually quite intuitive, all right? Okay, so let me move on. Okay, from Yusuf. Will we be asked to write IFO code? Yes, you will be. Especially, I want to draw your attention to, you want to know how to write across notation. Across loop, across all, across sum. Okay, and then I think you have to also, you may also want to look into the generics lecture. Remember when we talk about the lecture number 4, when we talk about the iterator design pattern, right? We actually got some exercise for you over there. You may want to redo it just to brush out your memory about how to do generics. Okay, and from Pathav, are we going to get any question to draw the bound diagram? No. Okay, guys, lucky you. So this time you don't have to draw any bound diagram. We want to save the hassle for you to really draw something, upload it, and then send us to grade. So don't worry about it. You're not going to be asked to draw any bound diagram. However, you might be asked to read bound diagram. Okay. From Mohammed, if eClass were to be shut down during the exam, what steps should we take? Fingers crossed. I really hope it's not going to happen. Okay. So guys, this is my advice to you. Okay. So as I said, there will be some measures you are expected to take on your end. Of course, please try to do as much as you can. For example, if you know that for your home computer, maybe it freezes very frequently, or maybe your internet network may not be so stable, try to see maybe you're able to use somebody else's computer, or maybe it's possible to really go somewhere to use computer, if that's at all possible, right? Because many of you may not be in Canada, so it might be possible in your home country. Try to do as much as you can. In the worst case, okay, there will be one principle over here. As soon as you start the exam, you cannot take the deferred exam anymore. That's not a policy I made. It's a policy made by the departments. So if for some reason the eClass is running very, very slow on you, on your end, let's say maybe, I would say every one of you, you should really try get accessing to the eClass. Let me write it down explicitly, right? So this is really important to really get straight. Let me write it down and show it to you. Okay, let's communicate this idea. So we got on Sunday, right? Think about the timeline over here. So your exam will be from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., right? Okay, so this will be the 2 hours. You don't want to miss any minutes. However, I would suggest maybe around maybe 8:30 or so, maybe even 8 a.m. I would suggest maybe around this time over here, you should really start testing your network. This will be something I will do as well on Sunday. If I really find that eClass is simply not responding, or simply just not simply shut down, what I will do is I'll report to UIT right away, and then I may just have to, I don't know, hopefully it's not going to happen. But in that case, I need to also consider if the exam can also continue. But let's hope it's not going to happen. That's my problem, so you don't have to worry. But I would say if the eClass is really running very slow on your end, if that's more like a universal problem for everybody, in that case, you can expect to receive some email from me about further instruction. So I would say, don't worry too much about it, okay? So what you want to do is start testing your network, and then if it's really not responsive, you may just want to get in touch with me. Because in that case, I can maybe I will be able to tell you whether there's maybe issue from your end, or maybe it's a universal issue, okay? And then we can see how to go on. But I would say in case it is not really responsive, in that case, I would say email me first, and then I would say you may still want to start the exam anyway. Okay, in that case, yeah, you know what? It's really difficult to really give a precise instruction, but let's hope for the best. If anything that really goes wrong around this period, I will try to send an email to everybody using just regular email, but not really by eClass announcement, and then I'll tell everybody what to do. Okay, but let's hope everything will be smooth. Okay, that's the best I can say for now. Okay, Professor. All right, so yeah, okay. Let me just see. In case your question has been covered, I would just skip it. Okay. Okay, let's see. Will there be questions that require us to write code? Yes, there will be. Okay. Yes, question will be graded manually. Okay, how many questions? I already told you. It's between 50 and 25 roughly. Okay, so will the from Patrick, will the multiple choice grading follow the same pattern as the quizzes? Where incorrect? Okay, so I think this is something I want to just explain very quickly, right? There's something you may have noticed already. For a multiple choice question, right? Because let's say this part here is just the answer, and then you got, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's say you got 5 options over here for you. Let's say the correct answer will be, let's say 1 and 2. Okay, what that will do is it's going to distribute equally into the 2 correct answer, which means this one will be 50% and this will be 50%. However, in order to really prevent from some smart guy, which will simply just choose everything in order to get the 100%, right? So that's why we have to make sure every incorrect answer will actually give you some penalty, right? Because we just cannot allow it. Like, let's say if you choose everything, you would just get 100%. It wouldn't be fair for those who really know what's going on. What's going to happen is, for the pink options over here, it's going to equally distribute the minus 100, which means if you answer anything wrong, it's going to be minus 33.3, and also here as well. Okay. And the same principle actually applies to n number of options over there, right? Okay, just to clarify. Okay, so each question will have the subparts. I think some question does have subparts, but yeah, I think you will. Are the questions evenly distributed on the lecture material, or is there more focus on later lectures? I would say I definitely ask you lectures materials before the reading week. So I would say it's supposed to be a comprehensive exam. I think the intention is you should really review everything. Okay. From Manor, although we are given 2 hours for the exam, how long should it actually take us to finish the exam? 1 hour or 1.5 hours? I think for the exam, well, also depends on how well you have understood the issues, how well you can respond to it. So I would say if you understand all the materials reasonably well, I think finishing within 2 hours should not be a problem, right? But you don't want to, you may not expect that you got 1 hour left to really check your answer. That's not the case, okay? You might be able to manage to get 10 or 15 minutes left to maybe check some questions. But I would say, since you can jump between the questions, I would say maybe whenever you answer the question, try to answer the best you can, so you can minimize the need you have to go back. That'll be my advice. Okay. Okay, so I think, yeah, something about exist, right? I already said that. How to do logical operator. Will we be allowed to write our answer on paper and then upload it? No. Everything has to be typed answer. Okay, guys, let me make it clear. If I want you to do proof, you must type the ASCII characters on the given answer box. Actually, to be I believe when I actually created a question on eClass, by default, attachment is simply disallowed. So I don't think I enable that. So you cannot attach anything to your answer. So you must type.
I have a question.
Okay, question. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I have network problems like internet, would my in the middle of the exam my internet gets disconnected? Would my answers be saved automatically?
It will be saved. Yes, correct, correct. According to eClass, I also experienced this myself, maybe from other students as well. I think, let's say, I believe if you somehow got disconnected during the exam and then you try to reconnect to it, I believe it will save the last bits. But I believe eClass try to save your answer periodically, right? You might lose something, but not completely. So I believe that's the case. Okay. All right. Okay. So from Asma, for the program correctness questions, are we expected to do the proof of the correctness loops and identifying the weakest precondition for the same question? Okay, good. All right. Let me just be clear over here. I think this particular exercise there, I also got some email question from your fellow students. Oh, sorry, not this one. Let me just do it again over here. There we go. Okay, so I think hopefully many of you already tried to understand how to do proof like this. Okay, will you be given to do a proof of this scale? No, it's not reasonable. Okay, no. However, you might be expected to do part of it. Which part of it, you might have to see the question. Okay, so I would say it definitely helps your knowledge about how to, you don't really want to lose the big picture because you don't want to memorize anything. You want to see, number one, how you state a whole triple, number two, how you calculate the WP, and number three, how you prove that the precondition implies the weakest precondition, right? So that's something you would like to do. But whether or not you will be expected to write such a long proof as one question, no, I can tell you no. Okay, you don't have to stress out too much by that. Okay, but you will be asked to do proof. From Emma, when writing code, will we need to test that if that works in eStudio, or is it being manually marked? Yeah. So I would say you don't need to test it. I don't think you got that luxury of time. So I would say whenever you're asked to write, for example, looping variants, or maybe to specify loop variants, I would say, yep. So if you believe, just try the best you can. I don't think you really have the time to test it, but it will be graded manually. I think that there are certain questions over there, a small number, maybe about less than 5, in which case you will be expected to write certain code fragment that has to be precisely correct. And I make sure that that fragment there has only one single solution. So you have to write that line precisely. And then that part is going to be graded manually. But there will be other parts for the programming code where you will be graded manually by the TA, in which case they can be a little bit more flexible. Okay. All right, let's say from Stefan, okay, you lose the current page answer if, okay, I think I believe the eClass will actually save the answer periodically if I'm not mistaken. So when you go back, you might lose some part of it, which if that part has not been saved by eClass, but hopefully it's not really everything you will lose. Okay. Okay, from Cedric. Is there any particular section topics of the notes that will carry most of the percentage load? Okay, I would say it's a comprehensive exam. You have to study everything. But I can tell you that it's very important to know how to write contracts, very important to understand the principle for inheritance, and also to know how to do correctness proof, right? It's really all important. From Arslan, how conscious should we be about is-s? Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question here. I would say, so whenever you write the across loop, for example, if you say across some array as maybe I, right? And we know that over here, if you want to say A, I, so we know that programmatically this is not correct because this is supposed to be I.item, okay? So I think Aslan's question is like this. I would say if the question is like an essay question, which means it's to be graded by the TA, I think for such little mistake, we can tolerate. That's not a problem. However, if the question itself made it very clear that you have to type with caution, in that case, such mistake cannot be tolerated. So it depends. But I believe for this kind of detail, it will only be graded manually, so you don't have to worry. Okay. For the particular example you're talking about. Will both answer be accepted? Yeah, so either you say S over here or you say is over here. Yeah, both of them will be accepted, right? If that's to be graded manually, for sure. Yeah. Yes. Nora, how many percentage of the, okay, how many are going to be multiple choice and how many typing? I think that's the question I wouldn't answer. So I would say there will be a mix of the multiple choice, short answer, and also essay. Okay. Okay, guys. I think any other questions you want me to clarify about the exam? Anything else? All right. Everybody's okay. All right. Good. All right. So now, having said this, let me just start talking about the question you put on the Google Doc. Okay. I kind of rearranged the Google Doc questions a little bit, just to flow a little bit better. So whenever I hit a particular topic, so feel free to speak up or just type on the chat about some follow-up questions if you wish. Okay. The first one. The first one is more about writing contracts. It's from C-Way. It's a question from quiz number 3. Okay, quiz number 3 over here. Okay, let's just read the question very carefully, quickly. So we have a class called myContainer, and then we got some implementation array of string. And we try to define this particular reverse command. So basically, you can think about we're going to change the attribute array over here. Let's say in the pre-states, if the implementation array is simply ABC, in the post state, it's going to be CBA. All right, very easy. This might be the version you took when you took your quiz number 3, right? It may not be. And then we simply don't worry about the implementation, but I can assume that it's going to correctly reverse the array implementation here. Okay. And then what we want to consider will be the question mark. We want to consider 2 alternative post condition and see whether they are appropriate or not. Okay, and then there's some invariant over here. Oh, by the way, I think in your exam, if you're wondering about what the indices should be for the array, I would say by default you can simply assume if there's nowhere mentioning the questions what the lower indices should be, you can assume it's going to be 1. Just be consistent with how we have been talking about in this course. In case the lower is not 1, I will explicitly mention that in the exam question. Okay. Okay, guys, that's about the question here about the reverse. So what I would do is, let's talk about these 2. Okay, I should have covered the answer over here. Actually, I should have, but that's okay, just to save time. So the first one is about the first post condition about the reverse. We simply go across the 1 until implementation account. Of course, the implementation here is already the post states value. Already? And then we simply say we want to cache the value. Okay, you can see a little bit more clear. Let me zoom in. You can see you got the parentheses over here. And then you want to make a deep twin copy of the imp in the pre-states. And then when you check the post condition, you're going to go to index I. What can I be? Depending on how large the array is. Let's just take one example. Let's say the following. So we talk about the pre-states. Let's say we just use this example here, shall we? Just this one here. In the pre-state, let's say we just got an array over here that's simply just A, B, and C. Okay, and then we assume that it's going to be correctly implemented for the reversal. So let's say in the post states, that one is just going to be C, B, and also A, right? And also we say that the lower is just going to be 1, all right? So let me just put the indices, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3, all right? So let's try to see whether this particular post condition will work. Well, for those of you who might be thinking ahead, actually this is not going to work. Let me just be more directly to the point, right? Think about what's going to happen. What's going to be the value for I? It's going to be 1, 2, and 3, right? Because you can see you go all the way to the count. All right, 1, 2, and 3. And now you can see this expression over here is simply implementation.count. In this case, implementation in the post states.count will just be 3. 3 minus I. So now what will be 3 minus I? 3 minus 1 will be 2. 3 minus 2 will be 1. 3 minus 3 will be 0. So now, is 0 a valid index? Not really, right? Invalid index. So that's why the answer should be some contract violation at the runtime. Something about the index may be too small violation. You can check it in iPhone Studio if you wish. All right. So that's about the first one. Okay, what about the second one? Guys, let me zoom in a little bit because this is also very important. All right. So now, can anybody tell me, this can be a short answer question, maybe I'll simply give you this, and then you have to tell me why there would be a compilation error. Anybody? So what is the compilation error over here? Why? Because of I, very good, Amir. Okay, Ovek, very good. I does not exist in the pre-state and thus cannot be cached. Very good. That's precisely the. So I think, guys, you want to practice. That's why I highly encourage you guys. If you know any friends in the course, feel free to form some study group. One very valuable exercise you can do. Okay, let me recommend just an aside to help you prepare your exam. Recommended exercise. Okay, basically, study group, or just by yourself, that's okay. Of course, I cannot force you to really form a group. Okay, and number 2, go over the quiz question. So now you don't really have to go over every question. Since we got 12 quizzes so far, I don't think it'll be it's really doable, to go over everyone. But it's up to you. At least go over some quiz question. But what should you do? This is the key. Turn true, false, or multiple choice questions into short answer. Okay, so now basically what you want to do is number 1, explain why the correct answer is the case. And also very important, explain why the incorrect. And sometimes it might be more than one answer that's incorrect. Sorry about my writing, are not correct. Are not the case. So that'll be some valuable exercise you can do. All right. So study group over here, you can either maybe find, I don't know, if some of you already know somebody in the course, you can form some study group to do this exercise together, or you can just do it by yourself. That's what I meant by study group. Okay. All right, let's go back to here. Okay, so now it's okay. All that already answered that very well. You can see that all keyword over here applies to the entire expression over here, right? Over here. That's the expression. And now you can see that the I over here is really does not exist in the pre-states. I does not exist in the pre-states. So cannot be cached. And if you're still wondering about how to interpret the O expression, I think if you go back to lecture number 4, lecture number 2, I did talk about O expression in several details. You can refer to it. All right. Okay, that's about this question. So Siwei, if you're here, is that okay for you? I hope that's okay, right? Just in case you want to ask any follow-up questions.
So for the first one,
yeah.
Why not the compilation error instead of why it's not compilation error? Because 0 is clearly not a valid index.
No, This is not a compilation error because if you look at the first one, okay, the brackets is really important. Let me just zoom in even more. Okay, you can see the brackets is basically here. Oh, sorry. Let me just make it a bit smaller. You can see here and also here, right? So that means this is the only expression that we have to cache in the pre-states. And somehow this particular I is actually outside the scope for the old expression. So that's why this I here is not going to affect the caching process in the pre-states. See where it makes sense to you? Is it okay? Okay, I assume that's okay. All right.
Sir, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
So when you said that having such kind of questions, we can try to convert it to short answer question like why is it the case?
Yeah.
Can we also assume that we are given such kind of question and we're being asked like write the correct post condition for this one?
That could be, yeah, exactly. It could be. There are many ways you might be asked, right? But you can see the ultimate answer is really around the same, but just about how I ask you. It could be, for example, as you said, it could be that maybe I'll say number one, I'll simply just say this is the reverse command. Now, write the correct post condition for this. That might be the question. Or
yes,
maybe I'll say this is the post condition I have right now. I claim that to be correct. And then you want to prove or disapprove my claim is correct or not. Right? Well, when I say proof or disapprove, I don't really mean a correctness proof. And then in this particular case, your answer should be, well, since your I over here is actually going to be in the third iteration, this expression here is going to be 0. That's why you're going to get some violation. That's what your explanation should be.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right.
If we were to write our own post condition, like the example he said, would there be only one correct answer?
Oh, good question. So basically, if you are asked, for example, let me make your question a little bit more general. If you're asked to write some contract, either precondition, postcondition, loop variance, or class invariance, there are definitely cases where there might be more than one answers. But when I give the answer to the TA, I will try to give them multiple possibilities that I think student will most likely come up with. And then I'll try to explain to the TA how those post conditions work, and then I'll ask them to judge. And whenever TA really run into some very creative answers which they don't know how to deal with, in which case they will pass them to me, and then I will judge. So don't worry. Okay.
Professor?
Yeah, yes.
So for the first question, I think there are two violations. Which one will go first? I mean, because 1 and 2 are not equal, so it should be A and B. And so I think that one will go first before the invalid index.
You mean for this particular one?
Yeah, because 0.
Yeah, so this one here, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. However, oh no, patient, it's a good concern. You're basically, for example, let's say we take this one for example. Okay, let's say this. Remember, this is a universal quantification, right? So it will only give you a conclusion whether the entire for all expression is true or false after everything has been evaluated. For example, let's say in this case, when you compare 1 and 2, you're really comparing. Let me just be more precise. When you compare index 1 and index 2, so you're really comparing 1 and 2 over here. I agree with you. They are not the same, which means for the very first iteration, this particular, let me use this color, this particular equality is going to give you false. However, having false for the first iteration doesn't really mean you're going to get a violation right away, right?
Okay.
So what's going to happen is in the very last iteration for this particular reverse, when the index actually get into 0, you don't even get a chance to really return the result for the comparison because this particular expression here already give you some invalid index. So you wouldn't get any violation before this particular, so that's why when I some contract violation would be about the index. So Beijing makes sense to you?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, guys, any follow-up question to all expression or contract writing in general? Please feel free.
Professor.
Yes.
Professor, my question is, if we change tilde with is equal sign, would that compile?
You mean the first one or the second one?
First one.
First one, okay, sure. Let me write it down, okay. I believe that will compile, okay, so you got this across notation over here, okay, so whatever it is, okay, we'll talk about the first one. And then you say all over here. Let me just copy that so we'll be precise. So here you say alt imp dot deep twin, okay. And then over here you say I. So now you're saying rather than tell that you're saying equal over here. And then you're putting implementation over here, imp dot count minus I. Okay, so you were asking whether or not you will compile, right? The answer is you will compile.
Okay. So
you compile because you're simply just comparing two object expression over here using equality, right? So now remember there are two contexts over here, right? Not just in IFO but in Java as well. Whenever you're using, for example, think about the equal here, it's like an equal in Java, right? So when you're using it, depending on what the type is for the two sides. Let's say if the two sides are simply just integer, for example, in that case, the equality here just compare their value. On the other hand, if the two sides here are simply, for example, account objects or string objects, in that case, this will be comparing the addresses, right? So it will compile. It can definitely be executed and give you some results. But now, what will be the result? That's a question. Do you know what the answer is? If I just use a equal here.
they should. I don't think so. There should be a violation.
Well, oh, actually, you know what? Let me just let's get away that problem. You're right because it's still the same. Let me just say this. Okay. What about I say minus I plus 1? Okay. So now we are free from that particular index problem. Okay. So now that means rather than 2, 1, 0, we're gonna get 3, 2, 1. That's, by the way, that's what the correct post condition should be. So now my question to you would be, what if I put equal sign over here? Is that going to make is that going to be true or false overall for all?
It should be true, no? Because both of the types are integers. I mean,
the I over here. Let's see. No, actually, you can see the type over here. Let's be careful. We say implementation of type array of string, right? So it's not integer.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's okay. Just be careful on the exam. So you can see the string over here, which means when you say deep twin, it's going to be a deep twin of string.
Oh, a totally separate copy.
Exactly, exactly. So now it's a very important, in case that's on the exam, in case the member type over here in the array is actually integer. In that case, it wouldn't make a difference. It will not. However, it does objects like a string, accounts, or split tree, for example. In that case, using equal sign is going to make a huge difference, right? So that means trivially, it's just going to be false. Because when you compare two strings, whereas one is a deep twin of the other, they cannot be equal by their address.
Okay, makes sense.
All right, very good. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Guys, any more follow-up questions, please?
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yes.
So just want to confirm, so for the equal sign, you said if they both were integers, we will be checking that they're at the same address, right?
No, if that's integer, we're checking for their values.
Okay.
So remember, integers in any language is like a primitive type. It's just that in IFO, we call it expanded. So in that case, if you're comparing two expanded types, in that case, you're really comparing their contents, like a value.
Makes sense, okay.
Okay, good. Any more?
Well, sir, about across all and across some, we know that one result of the false in across all will cause the whole across to false, and some true of the across sum will cause the across sum to be true.
Yeah.
And but during the runtime, they always check every statement inside them, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you know what? this might be more about how the compiler will actually implement the checking for the logical operator. I don't think you should really worry too much about it, but at least for as far as the exam is concerned, you can always assume the following conceptual model. At the runtime, if you want to check the across, for example, if you say across, some iterable collection, and then either all or some. Okay, sorry, let's say across, right? Think more mathematically. They definitely put some expression over here. You can think about what's going to happen there. Let's say expression maybe p, right? And then you say is maybe I. You will say pi over here. What you will do is you're going to say p for the first iteration, p for the second iteration, and p for the third iteration, maybe all the way to the last iteration. You're simply just putting conjunction out of them. And then even though, let's say, even if you know that it's already false, you wouldn't early exit from the loop, not really. You'll just evaluate all the way to the end. Similarly, for the across sum, even if you know that the current one is already true, you don't really return true right away. You have to go all the way to the end. But how the compiler optimize such checks at the runtime, it depends on them. So we don't have to worry about that detail.
Oh, so does this do the same action for the across loop? Because the loop is not a statement evaluation.
Yeah, you're right. So for example, if you talk about cross loop, right? So you also got, for example, across something over here, right? Is, and then you say loop. Yes. So I would say yes. Many of you may have realized already, if you chose to really do across loop, so that means you don't really early exit, no early exit. Which means, let's say, as soon as I see maybe the expression is already true, I want to exit from the loop like a break. There's no break will continue in iPhone. It's a language choice, design choice. But if you got across loop, if you really think you really want to early exit from your loop, you wouldn't use across loop. You will use from until, right? You will use from until, and then for the until condition over there, you can play with the Boolean condition here to say as soon as some condition is true, in that case, I can exit from the loop right away. That's how you play with it.
Okay, thank you, sir. That makes sense.
Good. All right. Any more follow-up questions? Okay, let's go to do the next one. The next one is about Deep Twin. Your fellow student from Xiao. So it's from your quiz number 2. So we are basically talking about using the Deep Twin function over here, right? Let's just solve the question together. So I would say if you see a question like this, again, the easiest way, maybe the most efficient way, I should say, the most efficient way for you to solve it will be to draw some diagram. Okay, let's see. Let me just make it a little bit larger for you. Okay. So you have class A, in which case you got I and B, right? Integer and some B. So this will be a reference to another class, another objects. In this case, B is just an object which contains a reference to a string. Okay. And then we have object of type A. And then over here, we simply say create object.make. Dynamically, since we didn't really use the curly brackets, but it would be as if A would be the dynamic type, right? That's something we kept emphasizing. So now we want to know whether these, how do we reason about these two comparisons? Okay, before that, I would suggest, since both of these guys actually use the following sub-expression, obj.deeptwin, and also obj.deeptwin. So why don't we try to see what the difference is really between obj versus obj.deeptwin. Let's look at that. So, and then the rest of the question will be more straightforward. So let's try to visualize what's going to happen here. So let's say obj. So obj is going to be the address referring to some objects of type A, right, dynamically. So now A is going to be an object over here, and we know that for A, you got two fields, two attributes, I and B. So it's going to be I, okay, and then also B. And since we didn't really say any constructor over here, so we can assume It's just it will just be the default values. So 0 over here, and then also for initialization, I think part of the question also assume we also initialize the object B as well. So now how do we initialize object B? So now it's going to be B is now pointing to just another object over here of type B. Okay, and then we have string. Okay, so this will be just another string value over here. So can be any value. Let me just say maybe 3311, for example. All right, so that's about obj. Okay, so now if you want to say obj.I is really referring to this particular value over here. If you say obj.B is really referring to this particular link over here. All right, so far so good. So now we want to see how to create a deep twin. I would say creating a deep twin is very easy in some way. I think twin might be slightly trickier, but let's just do the deep twin. Just focus on your colleague's question. Okay, so now for deep twin, let's just use maybe blue. So now I would just say obj deep twin. Okay, it's going to be a deep twin. Basically, we're going to recursively create new object structure, right? Completely independent from the original one. So it's going to be follow this particular, as you can think about, this one here is a deep twin of this object over here, right? It's going to be, again, A, and then I is going to be with the value 0. Deep twinning a primitive value will just give you the same value, okay? And then we're also going to deep twin this particular object here, right? It's just going to deep twin just this one in turn. So what we'll do is we're just going to create another B object over here, and then going to be a string. And now recursively, this will be deep twinning as well. Will be deep twin as well. Just another separate string. 3311. Okay, so you can see that over here, this object here, and also this object here is completely independent, right? You can see that. They are not related to each other in any way. All right. So now, hopefully, now you'll be able to see. So what about the first one? Obj.I is referring to this value over here. Obj.I, obj.deep twin, right? This okay. Let me put it this way. You can think about the blue one we are putting over here is really representing obj.deep twin over here. Okay. And also obj.deep twin over here. So now, what's its I? The I is also 0. So now back to our original remark previously. So now here, this will be comparing the value between two integers, right? You can see I is integer, so this will be value comparison about the expanded type. What about the next one? The next one you can see B over here, right? Obj.B is really referring to this link, and obj deep twin is about this object here, dot B is referring to this particular link. So now what we want to see is this link versus this link. Apparently they're referring to just distinct objects. That's why when you try to really do over here, so this is really comparing address. Okay, so that would just be false, right? Because they are different objects. On the other hand, if you try to replace this by tilde, okay? Guys, consider this as a short answer question. So now, if I put equal sign over here, it will just return false because if you talk about two deep twin objects, they are simply not equal to each other by their addresses. If I simply replace this by tilde, will that work always? Will that or will that not? Anybody?
It depends on the type of inside B. If for this one it's string, so it's still be false. If it's not string like expanded type, it's true.
Actually, you're almost there, but remember. Okay, let's see what the type is. What's the type for obj.b? Is it a string or just B?
I mean, it depends on something inside B.
No, it doesn't depend on that. So actually, what's going to happen is like this. So I'm just saying in general, right? So here you can see obj.b is of type B. And also this expression d_b is also of type B. So if I use tilde over here, whether this will work in general depends on whether or not the is_equal query or like an equals method is actually redefined or overridden in that class. If you actually did not actually redefine the is_equal query in that class, it may not work. That's my point.
Professor, quick question.
Yeah.
I think for tilde to work, you also have to say compare objects to be true, right?
You only use compare. Okay, good point. So if anyone still remember what compare objects for, okay. So basically for any library data structure, okay, for example, array, let me just give you one example, okay. Basically any collection like an array, linked list, array list, or hash table, okay. So let's say array, for example. Just a quick review. Let's say array of type string. If you have doubts about the compare object, please refer to left 0 tutorial video. I think there's one video dedicated to this. Okay, so if I say a dot object comparison, I'll just write it in short, right? Object comparison is a Boolean flag. If it is by default, it's simply just false, meaning that if I say, let's say I got A1 and also I got A2, if I try to do A1 tilde A2, if the current object comparison is simply just false, so that means I'm going to compare every member, for example, A1 at index 1 and also A2 at index 1 by just equal sign, by their references. On the other hand, what I can do is I can say A dot compare objects. If I say that, so now if I say A1 dot, let's say A1, and also do A2 dot compare object. Let's say I have done that already. Now if I say A1 tilde A2, in that case, it's going to compare every member by using the is_equal query in that particular class. So it's going to be A1 at position 1, tilde A2 at position 1, and etc. So you can see the difference. But I would say for object comparison and also for compare objects, you don't have to worry about such such programming details for the exam. I don't think I have tricky question like this in the exam to test you about it, so you don't have to worry. So what I said you don't have to worry was, you don't have to worry about object comparison, you don't have to worry about compare objects. I presume you have dealt with them already in your labs and the project, so you don't have to worry about it in the exam. Okay, I have one question here from Anis. If I do compare objects and use equal, will the string, okay. So compare objects over here only impacts how you do tilde, okay. So now, whenever you do A1 equals A2, right? So this one is not impacted by compare objects at all. They are simply independence construct over here. So whenever you say A1 equals A2, you always compare by references. And the object comparison over here is irrelevance. Okay, just to clarify. All right, very good. Okay, so guys, any follow-up question to this particular quiz question? Anything? Anyone?
Yeah,
okay.
I have a question. If we use tilde instead of equal, would both of them be true?
You mean over here? Okay, so again,
options.
Yeah, so over here, so if you say A1 tilde A2, you know what? Let's just in case, okay, let me just do very quickly. Let's say A1.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, let me clarify very quickly. So 1 and 2, let's say, I'll just make some very simple example. A and B, and A2, let's say also A and B, Okay, let's say in the beginning, A1 dot object comparison, and also A2 dot object comparison. Let's say simply just by default, simply just false. Let's assume that. Okay, so now if I say A1 equals A2, hopefully everybody will agree this should be false, right? They're just different objects. Okay, if I say A1 tilde A2 right now, it's going to be false, because what this would do is it's going to say A1 at position 1 equals A2 at position 1, for example, right? Because object comparison is simply just false. So that means it's going to compare this object and this object, the different objects. So that's why it will be false right away. All right, let's say after this, we want to really compare the contents of the object. So what we can do is like this. We can say, let's say A1 dot compare objects. And also A2 dot compare objects. Okay, so now let's write down the same comparison here. If you say A1 equals A2, well, doesn't matter. It will still be false because we're still comparing different array objects. If I say A1 tilde A2, in that case, what it will boil down into is we're going to say, for example, A1 at position 1 tilde A2 at position 1. So what this will do is this tilde here is going to depend on the type of A1 at position 1, which is string and also string. So this one here is going to call the is equal in the string class, right? They are the same. They're the same. So this one will just give you true. Okay, make sense?
Yeah, so in the actual question, if you go back to the previous slide, so in the actual question, obj.I and obj.deep, if both of them are converted to tilde, it would still be the same answer.
Okay, I think, okay, I would say, yeah, good question here. This one here, if you change from equal to tilde, it will be the same answer, because for primitive type, it doesn't really matter if you use equal or tilde, they have the same effects, okay? And then for this one over here, if you use tilde, I would say the question itself does not give you enough information, I think, because we don't really know if the is equal is really redefined in class B over here. If it was, in that case, this should be true. If it was not, it might just be false.
So, Professor,
yeah,
a string is considered as not a primitive type, right? So
yeah,
if
just like in Java, yeah, string will just be like a reference type. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to use tilde in order to compare the.
Yes, object. I would say typically, when you compare different objects in general, you just want to compare the contents. You may not want to compare the references. There might be some scenario, but you'll be less common to actually compare their references. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, any more follow-up question to this? Okay, good. Let me move on. All right, so this one here, it's from Amir.
Sorry, Professor.
Yeah, go ahead, Ovek.
Oh, can you go back a slide?
Yeah, of course.
So when you're, back to the example you just did, go forward one slide.
You mean this one?
No, the next one.
The next one?
Yeah, this one.
Okay, sure.
No, you just went back.
Oh, you mean, sorry, you mean this one here?
Yes, this example that we just did. Yeah.
Okay, go
so
ahead. Yeah.
When we're doing a A1 tilde A2, do we have to say also A2 dot compare objects, or is it enough to just say A1 dot compare objects?
Oh, okay, good question.
We're just calling the is equal of A1, aren't we?
So good question here. Even though this wouldn't be covered in your exam, I think it's worth explaining, okay, since you ask. So let's say this, hypothetically, if I didn't have this, hypothetically, if I say A1 dot compare objects only, meaning that A1 dot object comparison will be true, and A2 dot object comparison remain to be false. So now, when you do A1 tilde A2, by default, before they even bother to compare their objects, they will compare their object comparison attribute first. If they are simply not consistent, it will just be false.
Oh, okay.
Okay, OFAC, just for you. You can easily verify this. You can very easily check. I'll let you check it yourself. If you just go to iPhone Studio, go to the array class, and then go to the isEqual query. Over there, you will see that the very first check they do is check to see whether the current object comparison is equal to other object comparison. You will see that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good. All right. All right. Let's now move on. Okay. So this question here is actually quite a simple. It's a question with a very simple answer, but I just want to bring stuff over here just to remind you quickly. Okay, why we're doing math models. Okay, that's from Amir. That's just for your information. Okay, just about the abstraction models lecture, maybe lecture 3, I believe. Anyway, whatever it is. So now, instead of using model function, remember whenever you use a model, it can be of type that's drawn from the math models library, and it might be a sequence. Maybe what you did in lab number 2, you did a relation, and also you did function, right? Can we now use array as the implementation, and then we simply use the array implementation to write contracts? So I would say this. Let me just draw a little bit more connection to your exam, okay? So in the exam, you might be, for example, be asked to write looping variants, for example, right? So the exercise that you were asked to do for your lecture 12, I think Ovek also posted, was kind enough to share his solutions, his trial on the forum. You guys can take a look if you wish. Also, you will see some comments I gave to Ovek on the forum. So I would say that particular exercise over there, we assume you actually got a model function over there, right? So that's why when you write the post condition, or when you write the looping variants, you can feel free to use the model. That's not a problem. However, if the question was phrased in such a way that you don't have the model function to help you, how can you write your contract just by using the just implementation construct like an array or linked list? That's something you want to think about, right? So I would suggest maybe go back to your lecture 12, go back to that particular exercise over there, and try to see, without using model, are you able to write it, the looping variants? You can try it, okay? So now, I would say here, let me just remind you again why we're using the math model very quickly, right? So now, the best way, later on when I put these notes available, you can see a little bit more clearly, okay? So basically, this is the layout, right? Remember when we talk about the stack example for the abstraction model, we talk about there are different ways for you to implement the stack. So this will be, okay, strategy number 1, using an array. And also this will be strategy number 2, using the linked list. For strategy number 1, the end of the array is the top of the stack. For strategy number 2, the front of the list is the top of the stack, right? So just 2 different strategies basically, right? And then we say that if you simply just use the array or whatever implementation attributes to write your contracts, it might work. That's basically what you're asked to do for lab number 1. However, it does have the drawback. Let's zoom in to see a little bit more carefully, right? So you can see, just give you one example. So you can see here, for example, for the push over here, you can see for the push over here, we simply say across 1 until count -1, and then we say item over here. On the other hand, if you look at the push for strategy number 2, it's different. From 2 to count, it's already different. And also item, and also item -1, right? You can see it's completely different. Meaning that if you change from one implementation to another, it is possible that you might affect the implementation contract you have written, okay? Let me write it down. Implementation change might simply imply contract change. Okay, and then when we talk about contracts, think about contract is something that's made public to the clients, right? It's more like the benefits by the client and obligation by the supplier. So if the contract change, it may have to change for more than one places, right? You can see how many places do we need to change. If you look at this a particular example here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Multiple places. So what design principle do we violate here, right? Hopefully everybody will know. Single choice principle, right? So that's why we violate single choice principle. It's not being obeyed over here, right? So this can be another kind of a short answer question you can think about in your mind. Think about, given these two, given this particular design over here, if we only write a post condition, for example, using the implementation attributes array, why would it violate single choice principle? It is because if you modify the implementation, let's say linked list, you might just have to change in multiple places about how the public contract has to be written to be revealed to the clients. So in that case, you will violate the single choice principle. So this is why. Okay, and we talk about the story goes like this. So since we know single choice principle is really violated, so we want to do information hiding. Because the choice of implementation is really subject to change. So that means we want to hide it. However, here when we say hide it, it's not as simple as simply export it to none. Not really, because for the private attributes, you can still refer to it in the post condition. So you're still revealing that particular implementation strategy to the clients. So when we say information hiding here, what we really meant is you're trying to hide the details about how the implementation strategy goes like inside the body of the model, the abstraction function. So we hide the implementation strategy inside the model. So remember, if you try to recall a little bit back in your lab number 2, so this is the only place, actually this implementation for the model and also whatever contract you have to write for the model, so these are the only 2 places you have to change whenever you make an implementation change. So that's the minimum number of places possible. And then everything else, right? Once you use the model, for example, if you make a change on the implementation, all you got to change will be if you go from one to another. All you got to change will be internally how you implement the model, and also how the post condition should be specified. Everything else will really stay the same. For example, you can see that over here. You can see this part here. They just say this. You can see for the push, we simply got this particular post condition. It will remain the same, even if we go from one implementation strategy to another. It will just remain the same. So that's why information hiding is the way to go whenever possible. All right, guys, any question about math models? Maybe I can pause here a little bit in case you got relevant questions. Anyone? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so let me just move on. I think the next question is also relevant to, also by Amir. It's kind of like a follow-up question, okay? So from Amir again, it's not directly related to the course, that's okay, you know, it's relevant. For a large amount of data, thousands of records, is it practical to have model independent of the data structure for information hiding? It's a fair question. Let's take your project, for example. Let's say in your project, you might have more than 30 classes, right? Do you necessarily have to create a math models for every class? I would say ideally, yes, but practically, no. You wouldn't want to do it. So I will give you some guidance over here, right? Because remember, what's the price you have to pay whenever you got a math model? Let's say you got some implementation over here. The implementation could be the list of enemies or the list of projectiles, right? So now whenever you want to use the implementation, you want to make sure whatever operation you want to do between the pre-state and post-states, you want to specify what's the corresponding operation for the math model, right? That's basically what we learned for the abstraction models lecture. So now, practically, if you really get access to such math model, should you create your math model for every class? I would say practically no. And you want to be selective. Everything has to be selective, right? You don't want to go either not really 0 or 1. You want to go somewhere between. So I would say you want to select the critical parts of your system. Basically, think about which part of your system requires some non-routine, which means non-standard operation. For example, if your operation is simply just to add something to the end of the array, it may not be so worth creating a math model for it. It may not be so worth. However, it's not non-routine and also algorithmically complex operation. I would say especially it would be very useful for your algorithmically complex operations. If you can create a model of it, in that case, it might be worth doing. Okay. So, okay, remark. You don't really need to do the whole system using math model. That's not practical. You can just choose the critical parts of it. For example, maybe you're using a splay tree as an efficient data structure for your database. In that case, only for the splay tree class itself, you can write some math models. What could be a good models for tree? I'll let you think about it, right? So you can create a splay tree class, and then inside you can create some math model. However, for the rest of the system, you don't necessarily have to create a math model, right? Just from a practical point of view. Okay, that's a quick response to Amia's question. Okay, the next one. So this one is from Cedric. Okay, this from your inheritance lecture quiz, right? Let's do it again. It's about the use of precursor. But I would say if you go to any C family language, they use the keyword super. You will be using a similar way. Okay, I thought about it this afternoon. I think that there might be a different way I can present the solution to this. So I remember I also went over this quiz question in the corresponding Q&A in week number 7 or 8, right after the reading week. But I think there's another way I can present a solution. Hopefully that will help. Okay, let's see how we can solve this. Cedric asked me about both of them, so I'll just do one of them. The other one you can do it by exercise. Okay. So what we have is we got 3 classes. We got A, B, and C. Okay, let's figure out the inheritance relation. A inherits from C. And then B inherits from A. Right, you can see that very clearly. Okay, and C alone. Right, there's no further ancestor up from C. And then we are basically trying to do the make. Let me just, you have some C here, you got make over here. And also, you can think about that one is already implemented, right? You can see some code over here. What about A? It's simply just redefined, okay? And also for B, that's also redefined. All right, let's now see how you can do this. Basically, you got to keep doing substitution from bottom up. Okay, let me show you what I mean. Let's start from this guy here. Let me say I want to say whatever implementation I have here is the blue. Excuse me. So let's say we got blue here, okay, and we got green here. Let's say lighter green. Okay, and then we got pink over here, right? It's a simple example. You can definitely feel free to generalize it. Okay, how can we do it? Okay, so now for the blue one is at the bottom. Okay, so now for the blue one, we basically let me just copy these 2 lines. We say I is assigned to 5, and then precursor ni minus 1. What's ni? Ni is simply the arguments, right, over here, right? Let's not worry about it for now. Okay, so now, what does precursor here really mean? The precursor here is really talking about the parents, immediate above parents over here. So that would be the precursor here is basically talking about the green one over here, right? So now that means this particular line over here can be replaced by this block of code. Okay, so now let me replace it. It's going to be I is assigned to minus 2. Remember, everything's inherited, right? So now precursor is simply replaced by this block of code from the parents. I is assigned to minus 2. And then we got precursor over here. And then ni multiplied by 3. And then I is assigned to I plus 4. Okay, we still got precursor to figure out. You know what? In some way, what I'm doing now is exactly how the compiler under the hood is trying to figure out how to use precursor. And this applies to any programming language you might have. So for those of you who want to dig further into how to really design and implement your own language, in case you are in a CS program, 4302 compiler course is a good choice, optional course. Okay. All right, so now let's go on here. So now, what does this precursor really really mean? So now this particular part is really referring to A over here, right? What's A's precursor? Immediate parents over here. So that would be C. So this block over here. So that means what I will do is I'm going to replace this block of code over here, replace that by just this block of code, which will be I is assigned to I plus NI plus 2. All right. So for those of you who actually in the Q&A listening to me how I solved this problem here, maybe about a month ago, right? I'm trying to solve it in a slightly different way. So just different. You can compare to see which one makes more sense to you. All right. So now basically what we have got is we figure out a flattened implementation view. Flattened view of B's implementation, considering all the inherited code. All right, so let's now solve it. So now you can see that over here, let me use orange here, right? Okay, so now we got object over here of type B. So B is exactly at the bottom over here. And then we simply got 23. So you can think about 23 is simply the NI over here, right? So now you can see NI is simply 23. So let's see what's gonna happen here. I, first of all, is assigned to 5, and then reassigned to -2, right? So this will be the latest value. And then NI will just be 23. Oh, you know what? There's something I want to mention here, which I forgot. When you actually replace this particular value over here, you want to be very careful, okay? You can see this original value over here is NI multiplied by 3, which means this value over here should be replacing the NI over here instead, right? So what I said over here was not 100% correct. So NI over here should be NI multiplied by 3. Okay, just be careful, all right? So now let's say the NI here is simply 23, right? So now what's going to happen here, I will be equal to I, which is -2, plus NI is simply 23, right? So 23 yeah.
Even for the first substitution, you have to put NI -1.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? Let me just do it again. So guys, just waste maybe a few more minutes. Let me do it correct. You know, very good. Let me write down exactly what you have to do after the replacement. I'll let you work out the math. Okay. Let me just do it properly. Okay. So now let's just do it one more time. Okay. Now I will be very careful. NI -1. Okay, we'll start with this. And then NI -1 is going to replace the NI over here. I agree with you. Thank you. So now over here, we're going to replace this precursor over here. We're going to replace this whole thing over here. But now here, NI will be NI -1. Okay, it's going to be I is assigned to -2. And then we're going to get precursor. Okay, so now NI over here is going to be NI -1. And then -1. Okay, am I, okay, no. Let me do it again. Sorry, just confusing myself. So here, this will be NI -1. So this will be NI -1, which is NI, and then multiply by 3. Okay, and then this will be I is assigned to I plus 4. Okay, hopefully so far no mistake. Okay, and then we are going to replace this particular part. So this is the green part, right? We have just done. And then this part here is going to be used to replace the ni over here. So it's going to be ni minus 1 multiplied by 3, right? That's what we have. So now this part here, we're going to replace the precursor by, the whole thing is going to be replaced by I is assigned to I plus ni, which would be this expression here. Ni minus 1 multiplied by 3, and then plus 2. Okay, so that's the overall implementation code you have to go through. All right, and then eventually you're going to get 70. All right, I just maybe stop here. Just make sure everybody is comfortable with this particular substitution over here. Okay. Okay, any questions? Okay, this one you just have to dig in to do the substitution, or if you have a slightly different way to work out mentally, that's also fine.
Sir.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask that, let's say I equal to -2 wasn't there. Then the value of I will change, right? Because then 5 will be carried forward.
Yeah, Jimmy, so let's say hypothetically, if we didn't have this line over here, for example, so that means the I value would just remain to be 5.
Okay.
But since I is assigned to -2 was there, so that means it simply reassigned I's value from 5 to -2.
Okay.
So basically my point is, once you have done such substitution yourself, it's just not like a normal execution code for sequential composition. You can just work it out, right? All right. Okay, so that's this one here. Any more questions about this? Okay, good. Okay, next one. All right, so this one here is from Min. This one, I spoke about it actually in week number 11 about the visitor pattern. But, you know, since we got many people today, I can talk about it in case you haven't worked it out. So this one is really about the difference between double dispatch and also dynamic binding, okay? Double dispatch, dynamic binding, okay? So let me say this. When you talk about dynamic binding, right, it's a very general principle for object-oriented code executed at the runtime. So that means at the runtime, the correct version of routines, or if you like, methods. I'm just trying to be language independent over here. The correct version of routines or methods is executed based on the dynamic type. That's dynamic binding, right? You may have your own wording, but that's at least my wording. Quick try. All right, what about double dispatch? So double dispatch, put it simply, that means dynamic binding happens twice. Okay, that's what it means, all right? And then double dispatch actually is the only design pattern that we learned about in the course that has double dispatch at the runtime is the visitor, right? So let's now review very quickly. And then I can also tell you how you can solve this particular question. I think double dispatch will be very important for you to understand about the visitor design pattern, especially how it works at the runtime. Okay, so now, first of all, let's start with this. The visitor pattern works very closely with the composite design pattern. So let's say this. This part over here is just about, let me just make sure I highlight it correctly. Oh, sorry. You can think about this part here. This part here is really about building the composite objects. The composite objects. And then you also created your visitor objects over here dynamically as evaluator. And then you can see eventually you simply just want to say some composite objects over here. So this is a composite objects. And then accept some visitor objects. So this is a very standard line of using the visitor design pattern. And whenever you see such use of the accept, so that means you're triggering one instance of double dispatch. And every instance of double dispatch contains two dynamic binding. So that's the overall relationship you want to have in mind before I start the details for the example. All right, let's first of all, let's trace this quickly. Let's now go over this particular creates, okay? So we're basically saying we got C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 of type constants. We got A1, A2, A3, A4 of type addition. I try to be very nice over here because simply organized in a way that's bottom up, right? It will be the same for the exam as well, so don't worry. So I didn't try to mix the order, so it will be easier for you to draw. And also one tip for you, you may just want to have some piece of paper handy and some pen and pencil as well for the exam. I think that'll help you to sketch some idea. Okay, so now let's talk about this. So let's go from C1. We can think about C. Let me just draw a little bit more simply. So C1 over here is simply some integer constants. So that I'll put 1 over here. You know what? I'll just omit the actual value over here because we only worry about how many times the double dispatch is going to occur. So the exact value for the objects are not really important. So I'll just put C1 over here. C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. C2, C3, C4, C5, right? And now the first one, we say A1. We are making the assumption that for your addition class, the constructor simply takes the left and right subtree. So now for A1, it has a left child C3 and the right child C4, right? So A1 over here, right? You can see over here to the left, to the right. The left, the right. And then we got A2. A2 got C1 and C2. C1 and C2. And then the left and the right, okay? And then we also got A3 over here. And then for A3, we got A1 and A5. Okay, so now, sorry, A1 and C5. Okay, so that means we're gonna get A3 over here, and then it's going to have left and also right over here. So let me just move C5 a little bit up over here. So it's going to be left and also right. And also we got A4 over here is going to be A2 and A3, right? So A4 is going to be at the top over here, is going to have left and also right. This will be the right. And now for the left, it's going to be A2. So let me move this up over here. Okay, so that will be the left, that'll be the right. All right, I'm just doing this slowly, but hopefully when you visualize on the paper yourself, you can be much faster. All right, any question about visualizing the composite objects up to now? Everybody's okay? Okay, so now what I can do is, now let's analyze this line here, A4 that accept V, okay? So A4 is the context objects, the top of the composite tree over here. And when I say accept, right? So let me just, assuming that you're familiar with the visitor descent pattern, okay, let me just say very quickly. If you remember this diagram over here, right? When I say expression that accept, right? Which means the accept is actually defined in the expression class, for example. Every descendant classes of expression, we just got the accept. So now we want to know dynamically which accept should we call. So that's the first dynamic binding. You can think about it as part 1 of the first dynamic dispatch. Okay. So now we know that dynamically this is an addition. So we know that this one is going to trigger addition. I'll just add dot accept. All right, and now inside the accept, if you review your notes about how to implement the accept, it will simply just be the current, it will just be the visitor, which is V, dot visit, and then since we are now in the context of addition, visit addition, and then it will be just this particular, the current object, which is A4. All right, I'm omitting some details over here, but in case you want me to go over maybe the visitor design pattern in detail, I can do that tomorrow. So you can just put it on the Google Doc so I can get prepared. But let me just summarize quickly. So now this part here will be the second dynamic binding, like a part 2 of the first dynamic dispatch. So now what's the dynamic binding here? Dynamically, V is of type evaluator, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to be calling evaluator dynamically, and then we're going to call the visit at from there. Okay, if you recall this diagram over here, under the visitor, the number of visit that we have over here, right? Visit constant visit addition, it corresponds to how many classes we have over here, right? So you want to know which one. And more specifically, let's say if I want to call visit constant, for example, in that case, which visit constant should I call? Should it be in this class, or should it be in this class, or should it be in this class, right? It depends on the dynamic type of the visitor. So now if we go back here, so now when we want to call visit at, we're going to figure out what's the dynamic type for V. In this case, it will just be evaluator. Okay, so that'll be the second dynamic binding. Okay, so what we have sketched so far is we say that in order to call A4 dot accept over here on V, it's going to trigger the first double dispatch, which contains the first dynamic binding and also the second dynamic binding, right? So now if you look at the overall picture over here, you can also see the feedback from your quiz number 11. I also explain it over there in details. What's going to happen is this one is going to pass over to A2 dot accept, also pass over to A3 dot accept. And this is going to be done recursively, meaning that every descending nodes of A4 is going to trigger a single instance of double dispatch. So which means number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is why there will be 9 double dispatch. How many dynamic bindings do we have? You simply multiply by 2. So that'll be just another question, right? So now 9 double dispatch, which is equivalent to 18 dynamic bindings. Okay. All right. Let me see some questions from chat. One from Robbie. So let's see this. A3 dot make, and then interesting. So what Robbie is suggesting is, for example, okay, let me write down his line here. If I say, okay, one important thing to say is, in order, you can see the way we execute the accept is like recursively, right? We're basically traversing the tree one by one, the node one by one. So that means if it has to be really a tree. If this happened to be a graph, like it contains a cycle, in that case, you're definitely going to get infinite recursion for sure. So what Robbie suggested in the slides over here, let me just write it down to see if that's the case. If I say A3.make, and then I say A4 and C2, for example, what I'm trying to do is A3 is going to say left, is now going to point to A4 over here, and then the right is going to point to C2, for example. It doesn't matter, okay? So now, guys, hypothetically, if I do this, I'm going to create a cycle in a graph, right? Where's the cycle? The cycle is simply something like this. And then it definitely is possible to write into infinite recursion. Yes, that's possible, right? Okay, from Pavel, go over question in quiz number 12. A looping variant occurs at the end of the first iteration. Okay, let me see if I got anything else to go over. You know, I think, Pavel, could you please maybe put this question here on a Google Doc? So maybe this would be something I can go over tomorrow in detail. Otherwise, I may do it in a rush, since we only got 10 minutes before the end. I'll do that maybe tomorrow. Would that be okay? Okay, good. Just put it on the Google Doc. Okay. Okay, another question over here is, basically, I think that's related, right? Remember, let me just read the question to you. Okay, so now visitor model based on multiple inheritance, I would say only indirectly. Why? Think about this is the visitor pattern. Okay, this is a visitor. However, typically for visitor pattern to be applicable, that means on the left-hand side over here, we also got some composite or recursive data structure. So you can say implicitly, for the design that we learned in this course, visitor indirectly depends on some recursive structure that uses multiple inheritance. You can see this is the multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance. All right. Now the question is, in languages like Java, remember I said in the multiple inheritance lecture, it's more like a design level construct, which IFL supports. But in implementation language like a Python, maybe like a C# or Java, they don't really support multiple inheritance. What should you do? Does that mean there's no visitor pattern? Not really. Okay, no. There is. You know, just be careful here. I don't want you to misunderstand my answer. Yes, there is visitor pattern. Okay, now the question is, how would you do it quickly? Okay, you got different options over here. Okay, I would say for this part over here, this part, if you want to do it in Java, you will do it in a very similar way. You still want to have the visitor class with the various descendant classes over here for the individual specialized visitor. That would be the same if you do it in Java. That one does not require any multiple inheritance. But what if you want to implement this particular composite structure in Java? How would you do it? I got two suggestions for you. You can choose either one. The thing is, in Java, you cannot extend from multiple classes. However, you can implement from multiple interfaces, right? So let me just give you at least two possible solutions quickly. Okay, we talked about in Java, right? For those of you who might go back to Java later, okay, how would you do it for the composite? So let's say this. You may have, let me just use the expression example here. Okay, expression over here. Okay, let's say that's, maybe that's simply deferred. And then we got, for example, constant. Effective, okay, and then so here about the composite expression, right? So now I cannot use multiple inheritance anymore. One possibility is I simply collapse these two classes together, okay, which means I'm going to have maybe a class over here, simply call that composite expression. All right, over here, and then maybe under this I have maybe maybe addition, and also I got maybe multiplication. All right, so guys, here's my question for you. It's kind of related to our lecture. If you simply just put a single class over here that collapses, let me just tell you what I have done. Combination of composite and composite expression, right? Any design principle that we are going to violate if we do this. I'll give you one hint over here. Think about furniture. OFIC, exactly, single choice, very good. Remember what we said before? So now let's say if there's another recursive system we want to support in the same projects, let's say furniture. In that case, imagine this. We got furniture over here, and also maybe we got chair. Okay, let me do it again. We got furniture, and then we got chair. And now, how can we create composite furniture? We have no choice but just create a class over here by itself, which might duplicate lots of code between composite furniture and composite expression, because you simply just cannot inherit composite furniture from composite expression. It doesn't make sense. So that's why single choice principle might be violated. But I would say that's okay, since you don't have the option for multiple inheritance. That's one possibility. What about another one? Another option for you would be, let's try to use some approximation of multiple inheritance. Let me put expression, and then we got constant. Okay, effective. So now what I would do is I'm going to just have, let's say I still got my composite expression over here. And then under which I have add, and also I have multiplication. All right. And then, so now what can I do? Let me just be explicit. I'm talking about extents over here, right? Because there might be some code that's in the expression. But now I can potentially do the following. I can say I can increments. Remember the keywords in Java, increments. And then this will be maybe some composite interface. Okay, so that one might be just called composite. In this way, if you got a furniture class, like a furniture system, in that case, potentially composite furniture can simply increments from the composite as well. However, remember in Java interface, you don't contain any code in the interface itself. It only contains signature, but I would say it's still better than nothing. But you just cannot really reuse any code from the composite interface over here, right? But at least you can be just being uniform on the method signature, which is also good. Okay, so now here we just got basically here and here. It's kind of a simulating multiple inheritance, but not exactly, because over here there's simply no code. Okay, no code, just signature or headers. All right, so that's a response to Amia's question. So in Java, you can definitely still do the visitor design pattern without too much surprise using this structure over here. But I think for the composite design pattern, you may have to do either this or this. It's kind of up to you which one you want to go for. From Ennis, just to confirm, cohesion means only things relevant to the class are within itself. That's correct. That's correct. In some way, that also corresponds to the Unix principle, which maybe you heard about it in 2031. Do one thing and do it well. So you want to make sure there's a unifying thing for your class. Everything, every feature you put in to your class, you have to make sure it's relevant, right? That's also one of the design principles you want to justify in your project report, right? Anyway, all right. I got one more question over. I got two more. I think we only got about 2 minutes before the end. Okay, I don't really want to rush any discussion over here. I got one question here from Ring about singleton design pattern. She proposed to make some changes to the design, asking whether that'll be okay. I do want to spend some time talking about singleton design pattern. And then another one is from your colleague from, not too sure who, but that one's about the correctness proof tip. I would suggest I delay this maybe to tomorrow, since I know everybody might got something else to do. So I'll just finish in time. So guys, basically, let me make some mini conclusion for today. So today, in the beginning, we talk about different issues, what different concerns, what confusion you might have about the exam. I hope I answered every question you might have about the exam itself, okay? And then number two, we went over some topics today already. However, I think the exam review session is just to help you with some confusion you might have. Your priority should be to go over all the materials we have covered so far in all the lectures, okay? You really want to go over, especially get prepared for any short essay questions where I simply just give you some statements you want to justify to see whether it's true or false. That's basically the things you want to get prepared for the exam. Okay, so let me, I'll stop in just a minute. Let me just mention one more things before tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll still give you 2 hours of my time, tomorrow 2 hours. You can ask any question related to the lecture material if you like, but please put your question on the Google Doc so I can get prepared beforehand. And yeah, anything else? Yeah, if you got any more questions, yeah, just come tomorrow and then I will try to answer as much as I can. All right, any last minute question before I end the recording? Anyone? So Ring, are you talking about the actual exam or you're talking about just review session? Oh, I see. Okay, so I think for those of you who actually need accommodation, with the letter from the university, don't worry. I'm going to set up the time as regulated by the letter for you, so you don't have to worry about anything. But I think in principle, the exam should be self-contained, so there should be no questions during the exam. If there's anything you think that may not be clear, you just got to read the question maybe a few more times. Okay. From Hamza. Okay, so just about okay, sure. So in the beginning of the session here, Hamza is confused about this particular division here, over here. I guess that's what you're talking about, right? Over here. So what I said was, your exam, as of now, it's about 200 marks in total, okay? So that means if you actually got 190 marks from the exam, so that doesn't really mean you got 190% for the exam. That's not the case, right? So you got to divide this by the total marks, which means you got 85% for the exam. That's what I meant. I will try to confirm with you guys, maybe either, but that's not really essential information for you to get prepared. I think just for you to get some idea. I'll try to confirm with you about the total marks for the exam. I might just maybe send an announcement just to give you some information. So it's as of now, it's 200. But if I decrease it or increase it, I'll let you know. Okay. Oh, I see. What an embarrassing mistake. Of course, that should be 95%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, another question from Asma. How many design patterns can be expected in the same question? How many design patterns? I would say typically one. You might get multiple as well. I would say no more than 3. Okay, if that helps. Okay. When should we expect grades for the projects? The diagrams. Sure. So the TA. I got 4 TAs grading your reports, the design documents. One of them is done for their parts, but that's an easy part actually. So I still got 3 more TAs. They're still grading working very hard, grading your report. I will hope to get back to you about the grade. I mean the marks for your phase number 1 software, phase number 2 software, and also phase number 2 design documents. Hopefully, early Monday, I will get back to you. So hopefully I can give you 1 day or 2. I'm not too sure yet because it's really tight on the schedule. You're very close to the holiday. But I'll try my best to give you some time to really report any mistake about the grading. So if you want to. And then for the exam, we definitely have to grade the manual parts carefully. So you may not hear back from me about the exam before the holiday. So, but if there's anything, but I will try to be graded very carefully. So you might only learn about your final grades maybe next year, hopefully early next year. Okay. Okay, for your quiz averages, yeah, I can send out the averages. I'm going to actually, yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, I'll do that. Maybe either tomorrow or sometime around the weekend, I'll do that for the quizzes. So for Ennis, okay, as I promised before, for your phase number 2 software part, right, just about the acceptance test, if you get a higher percentage, for example, let's say you got 95% for your project phase 2, I'm going to use that to replace your left 3 software marks, just the software part, software for software, okay? Okay, so on the chance that eClass does shut down during the exam, I would say that would be very unfortunate that we have to deal with. I would say if the eClass really got just not functioning during the exam, if that really happened, I would say I need to deal with that carefully. I don't have any decision for now, but let's just hope that it's not going to happen. If that really happens, I'll try to be as fair as possible. But again, if the issue actually comes from your side, you have to be careful, right? So please, if there's anything you can do to really prevent any network issue that might occur, that'll be much appreciated. All right. Let's see this. Oh, for the for the course evaluation. Well, okay, I don't mind sharing with you guys. Remember what I said in the course participation. I really appreciate everybody in participating. But you can see over here, right? That's almost up to date, right? It's already closed. You can see over here for section A, we got 84%. And here for section E, for 76%, right? According to the rewarding scheme, I'm not trying to be harsh here, but that's a rewarding scheme. We said that both sections must achieve 80%, right? It's not quite there. However, at the end of the day, when I look at the cutoff for your letter grades, I'll try to make adjustment if necessary. But I'm just saying that that's the up-to-date numbers here, just to make it transparent to you, all right? So I really appreciate everybody who actually participated in the course evaluation. I will be able to read them maybe in January 15th once they got unlocked. So I will find out, all right? Okay, guys, yeah, go ahead.
I know this is a bit off topic from the exam, but I just wanted to ask you if you can release the average for Lab 3 software part.
Sorry, say it again. Release?
Release the average class average for Lab 3 software, because like I think you never.
Because remember, Lab 3 software part is going to be replaced by the Lab 2 by the project phase 2. You know, software that's higher. So I would rather update the average maybe after the replacement is done. That might be better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. At the end of the day, I think I'll try to make everything in a single place, maybe just on the e-post for you to check your score. Okay, but guys, as I said, please understand that it's going to be, our exam is pretty late. On the 20th, it might take maybe about at least 3 days for both me and the TAs to grade. So we may not be able to get back to you about the final grades until next year. But if I can make it earlier, I'll try to. All right. Okay, any more questions before I end the recording? Any more?
Professor, this is just a request. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
That if you can release the marks of the project design part, like the you know, the 10% before the holidays. If you could do it, that would be great for all of us.
Oh yeah. You know, I think I can tell you that for your project documents, the TA who was also doing some exam this week. So they should be able to get back to me their parts on Saturday or Sunday. So as I said, I'm hoping to get back to you your marks for the report for phase number 2, and also for your software part. For the software part, I did the first stage grading already, but there are quite a good number of submissions which I need the TA to really look at them manually. I already passed them to stage number 2 to the TA. That will take a few days. Okay, that's quite a large number for the TA to look at. But bottom line, I will try to get back to you everything but the exam, hopefully by the end of Monday. That's what I will try. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, let's see this. From Rain. The marks won't be released before January, or we won't be in the, about exam marks before January. Okay, so for the exam, so we're going to do it almost like a normal exam. Typically, you wouldn't get your exam papers back, right? So this time, I'm not going to release how to say this? We are not going to release the exam contents back to you after the exam, but we will release the marks for the exam at some points. Either by the end of this year or maybe early next year. That's what I will try to do. I will try to email everybody using eClass. So just make sure you still check announcement whenever necessary. Often, you know, to really see if I got any. Or you can simply refresh the ePost page periodically. That's where I'm going to post the marks. Okay. Okay. Any more questions? All right, everybody, thank you for coming today. We still got one more session tomorrow. Put your questions on the Google Doc, and then I'll see you tomorrow. All right, I'm going to end the recording now. All right, take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.